We are 3.5 days away from the most important election perhaps in American history, certainly in the last century. And I'm just going to shoot straight with you. African American people must vote for Democrats. I'm going to give you 10 reasons why in this video. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't do this, but the stakes are too high to beat around the bush. So I'm going to give you 10 reasons why every African American person who votes must vote for the Democrats. 10 reasons. Stay with me. All right, before we get into it, please go over to Amazon.com, grab your copy of my book, Education and Justice, and I want to show you in this book how public schools mistreat African-American male students. If you have an African-American male student in public school, you need this book in your library. You're going to thank me later. All right, so now let's get into these 10 reasons why African-American people must vote for Democrats in this election, from the top down, for the president on down. All right, I'm going to show you why in these 10 reasons. All right, so let's go to another screen. And the first reason is because we must put country first. Trump is a threat to our country. It is no debate. Even people who have worked for him in high levels, generals, officials in the Defense Department, officials in the Intelligence Department, officials in Congress who are all GOP, who are all Republicans. And they're saying that he is a threat to our democracy, our freedom. And they are putting country first, by some of them for the first time in their lives voting for a Democrat, Kamala Harris. Now, we don't know Trump. They know Trump. And they are reputable people. So we need to take their word, having worked with this man shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. They know him. So we need to listen to them and put country first. All right? So the first reason why we must vote for Democrats, and by the way, those who are with him, they too are a threat to our country. Like Mike Johnson, who is Speaker of the House, J.D. Vance, vice presidential candidate, who could become the vice president. And he has said he would not have certified the election. He has also said that Trump did not lose the 2020 election. These are dangerous people. We cannot let those people in office. So number one, country. Number two, we must defend our Constitution. Trump is on the record for wanting to suspend, even terminate the Constitution. And if we get rid of the Constitution, we get rid of the country, because it's the Constitution that established the country, the various branches of the country, as well as protections for us African Americans. So we must defend our Constitution. I've pledged to the Constitution on 3 occasions. That pledge remains. We must defend our Constitution, our constitutional rights. First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth, Sixth Amendment. We got to, absolutely, for us African Americans, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Man, we cannot let Trump terminate our Constitution. So country first, Constitution, and then we got to also protect our courts from right-wing extremists. Trump put 3 people on the United States Supreme Court, and they are all anti-black people. And they have pretty much just rubber stamped what Trump wants. They were in the majority opinion that gave Trump absolute immunity. These folks are MAGA. So we cannot allow him to put more of those kind of folks on the court. We're already now reeling and dealing with having 6 conservatives, ultra conservatives on the court. We cannot allow Trump to get the opportunity to replace more Supreme Court justices and federal judges with right-wing extremists. That's why I'm going to this extraordinary measure of saying we must vote Democrats. And by the way, I said in nearly every video that I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I am an independent voter. I am like so many other people in this country who are independent voters. I have not pledged allegiance to either party. I'm not an operative for either party. I'm not a partisan for either party. Country first. So we cannot, absolutely not allow a bunch of MAGA folks to control the United States Congress. And we know why we don't need to do that, because they will pass laws and regulations and so forth that will protect primarily white Christian nationalism, which is not Christianity. All right? So we must absolutely keep right-wing extremists not only out of the court, but also out of Congress. Now, Vice President Harris, hopefully president in just a few days, she has put forth an agenda of empowerment for the African-American community. She has put forth an agenda for the empowerment of African-American men. And she has put forth an agenda for America at large. But she can't get most of that done unless she has Democrats in office who can help her. So in order for her to get things done, she needs a Democratic Congress. Then civil rights. Civil rights. We must protect civil rights laws. We as African Americans, we must do this. It is the only reason why the Voting Rights Act of 65 that they've basically gutted, and we need to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed to correct, to fix what they've done to it. And when I say they, I'm talking about the GOP. I'm talking about MAGA. I'm talking about extreme white conservatives. They've basically gutted the Voting Rights Act. So we cannot let them continue to gut the laws that give us basic freedoms, like the freedom and right to vote. That is the only reason why you're able to go to the polls and not have to pay a tax, or not have to pass a test, or not have to count the bubbles in a bar of soap. The only reason why we don't have to do that when we vote is because of the Voting Rights Act, one of the major civil rights acts that Lyndon Baines Johnson signed into law in the 60s. We must protect those rights. Trump is anti-civil rights, as well as Project 2025, the GOP, MAGA. They want to undo civil rights. They have not been shame or embarrassed to say that. They have made that clear. So we got to vote for the Democrats to protect civil rights. Now, you're probably noticing that all my 10 things start with the letter C, so that you can easily remember it. We also must vote for the Democrats because we need to break America's racial caste system. White supremacy, racism, over the years has created a caste system. And that caste system has relegated African American people to the bottom. That's why we oftentimes experience the highest unemployment, the lowest amount of wealth in this country, the most incarcerated, and so on. I could go down the list. That is because of a racial caste system. In MAGA and Project 2025, the GOP wants to strengthen this caste system so that white men, particularly white nationalist men, white Christian nationalist men, can remain at the top of this caste system. You cannot listen to all the disinformation that's out there and think that you're going to punish the Democrats by voting for the GOP or voting third party or voting for the couch and let these folks strengthen this caste system that we live under. No, we got to vote for the Democrats. We also need to vote for character, moral character. We need leaders to have strong moral character. If a leader doesn't have strong moral character, he will bring the country down to his level of character. And isn't that what we've seen? Since Trump has come on the scene, he has no moral character. He's amoral. And as a result of that, we have seen the country come down to his level. And it is the reason why all the crazy, chaotic mess goes on around him all the time. Just think back to when he was in office. It was literally one chaotic day to another chaotic day to another chaotic day. Why? Because we had a leader in place who has no moral character. And that is not just coming from me. Again, that's coming from the people who worked for him. John Bolton, Mark Asper, General Milley, General John Kelly, who was his chief of staff. These people all say that he's unfit, that he's a fascist, he has no moral character, and they are all in opposition to him. His former vice president. So we need a leader with character. Kamala Harris has that. Civility. We need to restore civility in America. It was just, a couple of days ago, Donald Trump said Liz Cheney should be, basically he was saying, shot in the face. That's what he was inferring. 9 rifles pointed at her face. And what is he saying? We know he has a gripe with her because she was on the January 6th committee or commission that found him responsible for that whole thing. So he despises her, and he has pledged to get back at her. That is the opposite of civility. And he has, as Kamala Harris said, he has a list of folks that he intends to get back at if he's reelected. And keep in mind, he can get back at them without any recourse, without any accountability, because the Supreme Court has already said that he has absolute immunity for official acts. All he has to do is make the argument that Liz Cheney was an enemy combatant or an enemy of the government or something, have her killed, and he would have absolute immunity. Just depending on whether or not the courts consider that an official act. Because one of the questions that was asked around that case was whether or not he could use SEAL Team 6 to kill his to murder his political enemies. That question was taken up by the Supreme Court, and yet they granted him absolute immunity. We don't need this, people. We don't need this as a country. We don't need a man like that at the top of our government who is unhinged, unfit, and incompetent. And so what do you mean incompetent? Why do you say incompetent? Just think about COVID-19. And if you need to get some details about his incompetence handling COVID-19, just think about the death rate. So many lives were lost needlessly because of Trump's incompetence, and I would say malfeasance. Not just incompetence, but his malfeasance, his intentional lying, his intentional overlooking the facts. Also, Obama reminded us just a few days ago that his administration left a COVID response plan that Trump trashed. I mean, that is just pure incompetence. Again, it is also malfeasance and racism because he trashed the plan just because Obama left the plan. Just because Obama was the first black president.
I have been talking to scientists for a while, and so in my last year in office, we put together a playbook for how to deal with the eventuality of a pandemic. Because scientists had been saying with globalization and travel, etc., rising populations, that at some point there was going to be a pandemic. And so I said to my team, we got to have a plan, just like you do for hurricanes or tornadoes or natural disasters. So we put together this whole playbook. And we practiced the playbook. We get all the agencies. This is how we're going to respond. This is how to make sure that the public health systems in all the states are working. Here's how we're going to think about the schools. And when Donald Trump came in, we gave over this playbook to them. And but the point is, he ignored it. And 3 years later, a pandemic hits. Now, I want to really be fair on this, but I want everybody to pay attention. No matter who was president at the time, this was going to be a problem. This was a generational pandemic. People were going to get sick. People were going to die. We didn't have a vaccine right away. Businesses were going to have to shut down for a while. Travel was going to be restricted. But if you look at a country like Canada, their per capita death rate was 40% lower than it was here in the United States. So just do the math. That's more than 400,000 people. People's grandmothers, people's fathers, people's moms, who would have been alive if Donald Trump had just paid attention and tried to follow the plan that we gave him. It might have been somebody in your family that could have been impacted. So if somebody tells you that this doesn't make a difference, having somebody competent, somebody who cares about you, who listens to ordinary people, who listens to people who are experts in these areas, if you hear somebody say it doesn't matter, it does matter. And at some point, it will make a difference to them.
And then there's compassion. Trump showed no compassion during COVID-19. None. We have seen his hard-heartedness and cold-heartedness. And of course, we've seen him be nice when it serves his purpose, when it's about him ultimately. That's one of the things some of the former officials have said about him. Trump is about Trump. So we need compassionate leaders, strong leaders, tough leaders, but compassionate leaders. Not leaders that will get on the phone with an Army widow and tell her that her husband knew what he was signing up for. You remember? I remember that story so well. A young black sergeant from Florida, I think he was Sergeant Johnson. His widow reported that Trump got on the phone with her and said, well, your husband knew what he was signing up for. That's not compassion. What about the time Trump mocked a disabled person by moving his hands and arms uncontrollably? We don't need that. No matter what our personal issues are, or political issues, or policy issues are with Kamala Harris, we don't need Trump back in the White House. We don't need him nor his entourage, the 3,000 to 5,000 people that he will bring with him into the government. We simply don't need it. So I just laid out for you 10 reasons why we African Americans especially must vote for Democrats. We got to put the country first. We got to defend the Constitution, Congress, courts. If we don't do all of that, our lives would drastically change in this country, not only Americans generally, but especially us African Americans, because these laws are in place to protect us. Our ancestors were enslaved for 250 years, and the only thing that stopped that slavery were laws that were passed or amendments added to the Constitution. And then for the next 100 years, we still had to fight to get certain legislation passed so that we could move beyond a Jim Crow system. So our ability to move freely in this country, to live where we please, all of this depends on us keeping in place certain laws, keeping Congress from being controlled by right-wing extremists, keeping a white supremacist out of the Oval Office. It is critically important, folks. 3.5 days from voting. And I am pleading with you on behalf of our nation, on behalf of African American people to go out and vote for Kamala Harris and vote Democratic across the board. I ordinarily would never say that. I would never say that because, again, I am not a Democrat. So I would never say vote straight blue ticket. But in this instance, even Liz Cheney would tell you that. Dick Cheney and many other Republicans who are conservative, who've never voted for a Democrat, they will tell you the same thing because the threat that Trump poses to our country is real. I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Thank you for watching this video, and until the next time, peace.